not everyone here agrees. Some own guns, some would never touch guns, but we are all in agreement that it's important to talk about this in order to prevent gun violence. We'd like to start with an overview. So we're going to share a graphic, and it says nearly 109,000 people are shot every year, 33,000 people die, and at least 3 people will die during this conversation.
The issue of gun violence entered my life in December of 2014 when my only child was killed. It was a senseless, random shooting.
And I grew up with drive-by shootings as a kind of normal way of life. 4 of my friends died in high school from gun violence, from drive-bys. And so it was part of my upbringing. It was all around me.
Because I know growing up, my family owned a weapon in the house, and we were just taught don't touch it. We weren't taught like exactly what it does or anything. And it was also really accessible because it was just in this bag in the closet.
I do have a weapon. I am a sports shooter, a recreational shooter. I have shown my children how to use a gun, how to properly care for a gun. And so I believe in that.
My son never had guns. I didn't know of anyone who had been killed by a gun. And even though that was in my work environment, it wasn't something I really worried about. And then it happened to me.
Criminals can get their hands on weapons, and I think that is something that needs to be addressed.
There's a bit of a problem in this country. I think we can all admit if every week we're opening the newspaper, turning on TV, and there's been another shooting, and there's, you know, it destroys lives, it ripples out. It isn't just the person who's dead, it's the parent who never spends another day thinking about how their child is dead. It's the friends, it's the relatives, it's the coworkers, it ripples out.
So I really believe it's not so much that the gun laws need to be stricter. I think it needs to be a conversation where all adults model the behavior we expect in our community.
A gun owner that wants to carry a gun, they have to have that responsibility that if I'm going to carry this, then I'm bringing a gun into a situation that may otherwise not be there.
And I was aiming at the target that he put on the fence when I moved the sight to shoot it at this apple on the crabapple tree. And I was having a good time too, because I was like, I bet I could get it. And he goes, oh, and he knocks it to the ground. He was so angry. He was so angry at me. And I recall just being like, what happened? You know, what just happened here? Why are you angry at me? And he said, do you see where you're pointing your gun? Because I lived across the street from a church. So I'm so grateful that the first time I encountered a gun was also the first time I really came to understand that guns are weapons, guns can kill people, and just the act of aiming it is in many ways an act of violence.
My son, I believe, was killed in an impulsive act. He didn't know the person. I don't think the person, they caught him, I don't think he even knew he had killed someone that night. He fired a few shots into a crowd. He bought the gun for $20 on the street.
I haven't seen in my law enforcement career where more restrictions and changes has stopped that criminal element.
I do think we have a culture of violence in the United States. I believe that the adults need to set the example. I work with kids every day, and I think kids need that guidance. They need that structure. They need the conversation, and they need to be heard.
About a month ago, I read an article about, I think he was around 14 or 15, a boy who went to a gun show and purchased a weapon, like just like that. And I think I mean, I believe in the Second Amendment, so I don't think we should like take away guns, but maybe if there's like a process behind buying a gun.
I feel like if I wanted to get my hands on a gun, I could do that rather easily and rather quickly, like maybe within a week.
Sooner.
Sooner?
Yeah,
Really?
24 hours?
3 hours.
No.
3 hours.
3 days, within
No.
3 days.
3 days. That still feels fast. 3 hours seems really fast.
I would like to ask an officer, I mean, how do you feel about if there is a shooting and other people are carrying guns and so they try to stop the shooting and then you arrive on the scene? How do you determine in a split second who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, who's...
That is an excellent question, and that is extremely difficult.
As strict as laws might be, people's emotions sometimes take over, and they become impulsive.
So I'm wondering, is your suggestion that we do not need gun laws, that gun laws wouldn't help?
Oh, I think that they could help. I think that it shouldn't be the only strategy.
Like there's a lot of different ways people are affected by gun violence. There's a lot of different solutions, and one doesn't preclude another.
I like having the dialogue, and I think that's important. And I think changes need to come at this level, sitting around and talking and problem solving and talking about the issues.
Obviously, just laws aren't going to change it. It's the awareness surrounding it, just showing like, having everyone's different stories of like ways that guns have affected their lives. Because just getting the word out there of like what it can do and how we can help.
I think we got to stop being on autopilot and get involved in the conversation. I think that this is very healthy and that it needs to happen a whole lot more in communities.
You know, I often think if 10% of killings can be prevented in a year, that's 3,000 mothers who don't have to live in the hell I live in.
Thank you, everyone, for taking part in this conversation, for taking part in this Vision Quilt conversation. Just starting the dialogue can make a real difference.